How can someone know the name of your deceased grandmother and intimate details of your life without ever having seen you before? Why does the supernatural industry move billions if science says it is impossible? I'm going to prove to you that the answer lies not in magic, but in the data that the artificial intelligence Axiom has analyzed for the first time. For thousands of years, we went to them. Kings built empires supported by confusing prophecies. Widows in mourning found comfort in the words of a medium who seemed to bring that final goodbye. The police in dead ends sometimes turned to psychics to find a missing child. This desire to believe seems to come hardwired. It is almost an instinct. But what if this instinct is deceiving us? What if this centuries-old story is just a gigantic theater built exactly on top of our deepest fears and our greatest hopes? Some say it is a divine gift, others that it is a fraud. Where is the truth? Until today, the answer has always been lost amidst emotions, guesswork, and everyone's personal faith. But that era is over. We are going to open up and understand the gears of this phenomenon with a cold precision, one that the human mind alone cannot possess. Our tool of analysis will be an artificial intelligence. Our intelligence is called Axiom. We are not going to believe. We are going to know. To understand what we are looking for first, we need to understand why we search. Why is faith in the supernatural so powerful? We fed Axiom a dataset that covers all of human history, from the drawings of shamans in caves to modern auditorium shows. The intelligence analyzed treatises on theology, anthropology studies, and millions of personal testimonies. The conclusion was direct. Faith in psychics is born from three fundamental human needs. The first is the need for control. Our world is chaotic. Ancient man did not understand why the drought began. The shaman who supposedly negotiated with the gods gave the tribe the illusion of control over destiny. Today, nothing has changed. The person who goes to a fortune teller wants a map for the minefield of life. The second need is the thirst for knowledge. We are devoured by curiosity about what is hidden, and of course, the greatest of all questions about what happens after we die. The psychic offers a shortcut to this answer. The third and strongest is hope in the face of pain. When we lose someone we love, our world collapses. The rational brain understands that it is over, but the heart refuses. And then the medium appears, offering a bridge to the other side. A chance to speak again, to ask for forgiveness. The comfort this offers is so powerful that the brain shuts down all its critical filters. Axiom defines this as 3 open wounds. These pillars are fear, ignorance, and grief. It is on them that the entire supernatural industry rests. Our desire to believe is so strong that we become easy prey. That is why we need an objective standard, clear as mathematics and relentless as a law of physics. So we gave Axiom a task: create a protocol to verify authentic extrasensory perception. The intelligence processed all available information and defined 5 criteria that do not change, 5 pillars of proof. If the alleged ability fails in a single one of these tests, it is not real. We start with specificity. Real knowledge is concrete. A prediction like, next year the world will experience a great tragedy, is far from being a prediction. It is just a banal phrase. Now, on the 12th of March of next year at 17 hours and 32 minutes, an earthquake of 7.2 magnitude will hit these coordinates. That is specific. If it passes this, we need to see reproducibility. If the ability exists, it has to work more than once. It cannot be a fluke. A psychic who claims to find missing people has to show a result far above guessing time and time again. Excuses like, "The skeptics are disrupting my energy," are, according to Axiom, the main sign of a false claim. But none of this matters without falsifiability. For a statement to be considered true, it must have the chance to be proven false. The prophecies of Nostradamus are the classic example. They are so vague that they can be fitted into any event after it has already happened. The fourth point is statistical proof. The world is full of coincidences. You dream of a friend, and the next day he calls you. Miracle. Or did you forget the thousands of other dreams that meant nothing? To prove a gift, the results have to break the law of probability. And the fifth, the most important, is isolated information. The gift has to be paranormal. The information cannot come through the five senses, nor through logic. The person who looks at your clothes and your watch and guesses your profession has nothing of clairvoyance in them. It is pure observation. The medium who asks dozens of questions and then gives you back the information as if it were from the beyond is a manipulator. Axiom combined these five criteria and created what we call the patient zero protocol. In health, patient zero is the first infected person. In our investigation, patient zero is something else. It is the ideal model, the perfect carrier of the authentic gift. It is the yardstick against which all candidates will be compared. This protocol is our filter. It has no emotion and no hope. And from this moment on, our investigation has a clear direction. We have a tool. We have our yardstick, the patient zero protocol. Now, it is time to use it. We are not going to start with the modern psychics on television. We are going to aim at the giants, the names that have defined the very word prophecy for millennia. If the real gift existed, it must be found here. We will take Axiom to the past to apply the five criteria to those considered unquestionable. We will travel to ancient Greece to the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. For more than 1,000 years, this was the center of the world. Kings and generals traveled for months to hear the words of the Pythia, the priestess who spoke in the name of the god Apollo. Her predictions decided wars and founded colonies. The power of the Oracle of Delphi was absolute. But was it real? Let us apply the protocol. Axiom analyzed the most famous case, that of King Croesus. Croesus was the king of Lydia, immensely rich, and wanted to invade powerful Persia. He asked the oracle if he should attack. The Pythia's answer was that if Croesus crossed the Halys River, he would destroy a great empire. Croesus was enthusiastic, attacked, and was completely annihilated. The empire he destroyed was his own. Let us analyze this coldly. Where is the first criterion, specificity? Total failure. The prediction gave no names, dates, or results. And the third criterion, falsifiability. Level 0. The sentence was constructed in a brilliant way to be correct in any outcome. If Croesus won, the oracle was right. Since he lost, the oracle was also right. Furthermore, the priests at Delphi did not live in isolation. They had one of the largest information networks in the ancient world. They knew about the politics, the tensions. The Oracle of Delphi functioned much more as a center of political power than a window into the future, mastering the art of ambiguity. Let us jump forward 2,000 years. France, 16th century. Michel de Nostradamus. The greatest prophet in history, many say. His book, The Prophecies, with 942 poetic quatrains, still causes shivers. They say he predicted the French Revolution, Napoleon, and the attacks of September 11th. We fed Axiom with all the quatrains. The intelligence found no prophecies there. What it found was a pattern of language. Nostradamus purposely used an arsenal to confuse, with metaphors, anagrams, a mixture of Old French with Latin and Greek. He almost never gives dates. The most famous example is the supposed prediction about a German leader, where he mentions the word Heister. It seems obvious. But Axiom did a cross-analysis of texts from the era. Heister was simply the Latin name for the lower part of the Danube River. It was not a person. All the mystique disappears. What happens with Nostradamus is what Axiom calls retroactive interpretation. His words are like a Rorschach test, those ink blots. Each person sees what they want to see, after the event has already happened. Applying the protocol on specificity, we have a catastrophic failure. Falsifiability? Null. You cannot prove that a vague poem is wrong. But what about someone more recent? Someone who did not speak in riddles. Bulgaria, 20th century. Vangelia Pandeva Gushterova, Vanga. Blind since childhood, she became a legend. Hundreds of thousands of people lined up at her house to speak with her. She spoke about dead relatives, diagnosed diseases, predicted the future. Analyzing Vanga is difficult because most of the evidence comes from emotional testimonies. But let us stick to the data. Her most famous prediction was about the submarine Kursk. The quote says that at the end of the century, Kursk will be underwater. When the submarine Kursk sank in August of the year 2000, The world was shocked. Axiom investigated the origin of this quote, and it found two problems. First, the city of Kursk is located inland. It could not be underwater. Second, and most important, the intelligence found no documented source of this prediction before the tragedy. It only started circulating in the media after the submarine sank. The same thing with the prediction of the iron birds that supposedly predicted the attacks in the United States. The story only gained the world after September 11th. And what about the thousands of people she attended to personally? Axiom analyzed the scenario. Her house in Petrich was not an isolated place. People waited in line for hours, sometimes days. They talked. They told their tragic stories to neighbors, to Vanga's assistants, and to the taxi drivers who took them there. The intelligence simulated the flow of information and concluded that when the person entered the room, it was very likely that Vanga's team already knew the reason for the visit. Verdict of the Patient Zero Protocol. The world predictions fail in specificity and have no source. The personal work fails in the criterion of isolated information. The information arrived by very earthly means. We have three giants of history, three pillars of faith in prophecies, and all three crumble under a cold analysis. None of them came close to our yardstick. It seems that the ghosts of the past are just legends. But what if that is the problem? What if the gift is real, but subtle? What happens when we take the psychics out of the fog of history and put them under the cold lights of a laboratory? The titans of history fell: the Oracle, Nostradamus, and Vanga. Their legends, which seemed indestructible, turned out to be merely illusions born of ambiguity, retroactive interpretation, and good terrestrial information networks. None of them withstood the Patient Zero Protocol. But perhaps we are looking in the wrong place. Perhaps the real gift is not grandiose. Perhaps it is a weak, subtle signal that gets lost in the noise of history and adoration. And what if, to find it, a silent, sterile environment with impartial observers is necessary? What happens when we take the phenomenon out of the hands of priests and hand it to scientists in white coats? Today we are going to leave the temples and enter the laboratory. Let us travel to the 1930s, to the prestigious Duke University in the United States. There, a botanist named Joseph Banks Rhine decided he would use the scientific method to prove what he called extrasensory perception. He just needed the right tool. This tool became famous. The Zener cards, a simple deck of 25 cards with 5 symbols that repeated: circle, cross, wavy lines, square, and star. In the classic clairvoyance experiment, the tester shuffled and looked at the cards, one by one, while the volunteer, in another room, tried to guess what the symbol was. The chance of guessing correctly by chance is 20%, or 5 cards. Any result that stayed well above this, consistently, would prove the gift. And Rhine succeeded. His results were explosive. Some volunteers, like a student named Adam Linsmeyer, had unbelievable streaks, getting 15, 20, and even all 25 cards right. The probability of this was astronomical. The scientific world was in an uproar. It seemed that Rhine was about to prove the existence of the mind outside the body. But we fed Axiom with Rhine's original archives, with his laboratory notebooks, and the intelligence was tasked with doing a complete audit. The result was devastating. Axiom found a methodological disaster. The first error was visual cues. The first Zener cards were so poorly made that the strong ink could be seen from the other side of the card. In other cases, the volunteer could see the reflection of the card in the tester's glasses. This is just good eyesight, not telepathy. But the deeper problem was statistical. Axiom identified 2 practices that destroy any science. The first is optional stopping. Rhine stopped the test when the volunteer was on a lucky streak and recorded it as a success. If the volunteer was doing poorly, he continued the test in the hope that they would improve, or simply discarded the results as a bad day. The second practice is the file drawer effect. Axiom analyzed Rhine's diaries and discovered that only the spectacular results were published. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of tests that gave perfectly normal results, that is, random ones, stayed locked in the drawer. When Axiom took all the data, the successes and the failures, the general average of correct guesses was 20%, exactly what chance predicts. Rhine's laboratory of miracles was, in truth, a laboratory of self-deception. But the story gets stranger. Let us advance to the 70s, the height of the Cold War. Paranoia between the United States and the Soviet Union was at its maximum. Rumors reached Washington that the Soviets were using psychics as weapons of espionage. The Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency could not stay behind. Thus was born one of the most bizarre projects in military history, with names like Grill Flame and Sunstreak, but which became known as Project Stargate. The objective was to train psychic spies, people who, with the power of their mind, could see what was happening inside secret Russian bases or anywhere in the world. The American government spent $20 million on this, and the results seemed incredible. Psychics like Inga Swan and Pat Price described things that impressed. They saw a giant crane at a Soviet nuclear base and found a lost plane in Africa. When the program was revealed, its files were released. We gave them to Axiom. The intelligence did not find proof of psychic espionage. It found the same pattern of self-deception as Rhine, but with military money. The central problem was vagueness. The psychics' transcripts never said that the missile was in Silo 3. Instead, they were things like sensing something tall, water, and the smell of metal. This can describe thousands of places, and here enters the fatal error, what Axiom calls judge bias. The vague report from the psychic went to an analyst who already knew what the target was. The analyst's job was to find connections, and the human brain is made to find patterns. The analyst read tall and water and said that he saw the oil rig on the coast. He ignored the 20 other things the psychic said that made no sense at all. It is the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You shoot at the barn door and then paint the target around the hole. And the Soviet crane? Axiom discovered that photos of this crane had already appeared in publicly accessible magazines. The psychic did not need telepathy. He just needed to read the news. In the end, the Central Intelligence Agency itself concluded that the program was a total failure. The laboratory once again produced only mirages. History failed, science failed. But if everything is error and self-deception, how does that medium on the television show hit the mark? How does he know the name of the deceased grandmother of the woman in the audience? If it is not an ability, then what is it? Laboratories failed. History is full of mistakes. And yet, the illusion persists and seems stronger than ever. How does that medium, whom you are seeing for the first time in your life, manage to know your grandmother's name? How does he know about that inside joke that only the two of you knew? If it is not a gift, if it is not telepathy, then what is it? Now, the technology behind the magic is going to be opened and explained, because it is not about a paranormal ability. It is a psychological technique, sharpened by centuries of practice. It is the most powerful trick in the arsenal, and it is called cold reading. The name says it all. Cold, because the operator enters knowing absolutely nothing about the client. He starts from zero. Only it is not a guessing game. It is an interactive process, a subtle dance where the medium is the conductor, and the information is provided by the client themselves without them realizing it. To understand how it works, we fed Axiom with more than 1,000 hours of recordings of sessions with the most famous mediums in the world. The intelligence received an order to analyze every word, every pause, every reaction, and build the cold reading algorithm. Axiom identified 5 phases that repeat in almost all encounters. Everything starts when they cast the net. No experienced medium starts with something specific. He casts a wide net using high probability statements, the so-called Barnum statements. These are things that seem personal, but actually apply to almost everyone. You are very self-critical. 95% of people agree. You have a box at home with old photos that you do not know what to do with. Almost everyone does. Along with this come the statistics. I sense an older man, a father figure or grandfather, who had chest or breathing problems at the end. Axiom confirms that heart and respiratory diseases are the leading causes of death in older men. The chance of being right is enormous. As soon as you take the bait, we enter the next stage, which is take the bait and amplify. It is here that the magic seems to happen. The operator becomes a human radar, reading your every micro-expression. He throws out the bait saying he feels a connection with the name Anna, or perhaps something with N, Nina. He stops and observes you. If upon hearing Anna your eyes dilate or your breathing stops for a second, he has got it. Yes, Anna. She is here. She says she loves you very much. If you do not react, he changes course instantly, saying that the spirit says Anna is not who we are looking for, but this name is important to you. Perhaps a friend. Axiom analyzed that a good cold reader makes 5 to 10 small probes per minute. 90% of them are wrong. But our brain ignores the 9 errors and clings to that one hit as if it were a miracle. And that is where the game turns with the art of the question. It is the dirtiest trick. Axiom analyzed the syntax and discovered that more than 70% of the medium's statements are, in fact, disguised questions. He was military or wore some kind of uniform, wasn't he? If the client says yes, the medium triumphs. If the client says no, the medium has an escape route, saying that it is strange, so he was not, but he worries about his discipline. The operator never takes a risk. The next phase is flattery and comfort. When the client is already emotionally hooked, the medium applies the balm. He is so proud of you. She asks you not to blame yourself. You did everything you could. This is just cheap therapy, not information. It is what the client needs to hear, and it shuts down the last vestiges of critical thinking. The grand finale happens when the medium gathers all the crumbs you gave him in the last hour and presents them as a unique revelation. So, as I felt from the beginning, your grandfather Mikhail, who was military and died of his chest, is here and asks you not to worry about the sale of the house. The client does not remember that it was they themselves who mentioned the grandfather, the name Mikhail, and the problem with the house. The emotional shock erases the memory of the clues. This is cold reading. It is a performance, but even so it requires talent, intuition, and risk. But we live in the information age. Why improvise if you can know? There is a much easier and brutal method. It is hot reading. Hot because the psychic enters the scene already armed with facts, your data. We asked Axiom to simulate how long it takes to compile a dossier on an ordinary person, using only the name they gave when buying the ticket for the show. The scenario is as follows. Axiom begins the search. In 30 seconds, it finds your open profile on a social network. It sees the list of relatives. There is your mother, Elena. In 1 minute, it finds your post of mourning, mentioning her death. In 4 minutes, it finds your photo album, Holidays in Italy, and the photo at the Colosseum with that yellow dress. In 7 minutes, it finds the name of your dog, Archie, because you are part of a group of Labrador owners. 15 minutes later, you sit in front of the medium. He does not ask you anything. He says that your mother, Elena, is here. She is smiling and talking about your yellow dress in Rome and sends a hello to Archie. Your reaction is total shock. This is not a gift. It is just an internet search. And in the big theaters, it is even simpler. Hours before the show, assistants warm up the audience. They talk, ask why people came, collect the most tragic stories. Woman, row 7, red sweater, crying for Father Pedro, who loved fishing. The information goes to the medium via an electronic earpiece. The show begins. The medium feels an energy in row 7. A woman in red senses a Pedro, who shows a fishing boat. The audience goes wild. They witnessed a miracle, but it was just an information spectacle. We debunked cold reading, the art of psychological manipulation. We exposed hot reading, the technology of digital espionage. It seems we explained all the tricks, but a doubt always remains. What if? What if there is someone who is not an artist of deception? Someone who sincerely believes in their power? Someone willing to prove it, not on a dark stage or in a TV room, but under the most rigorous and fair conditions possible? What happens if we offer a challenge impossible to refuse? Prove your ability and win $1 million. The time has come to analyze this ultimatum, the greatest and most devastating experiment in paranormal history. James Randi's challenge will be our focus. To understand the challenge, you need to understand the man. Randi was not a scientist. He was a professional illusionist, an escape artist, an heir to Harry Houdini. and that is why he was the most dangerous enemy of psychics. He knew the trick from the inside. He knew how to deceive, how to distract, how to create an illusion. He was essentially the hunter who knew all the prey's hiding spots because he himself had been the prey. Randy was tired of seeing people using the tricks of his trade, not to entertain, but to deceive and profit from others' grief. So, in 1964, he made a modest offer of $1,000 to anyone who could prove a paranormal ability. Over time, the prize grew. And it stopped at a legendary number, $1 million. The rules were perfectly fair. They were a contract. First, the candidate said exactly what their power was. I can read minds. I can find water underground with a rod. Second, the candidate and the Randy Foundation created together a test protocol. The candidate had to agree to everything. Most importantly, the candidate defined what success was. If I get 8 out of 10 right, I have proved my gift. Perfect. The excuse that today I am not feeling well was eliminated before it even started. The candidate established their own goal. For more than 50 years, more than 1,000 people applied. People who read auras, telepaths, mediums, spoonbenders, forming an army of supposed superhumans. None of them won a cent. Why? We fed Axiom with Randy's test protocols. The intelligence identified the pillar that made the fortress impenetrable. It was the rigorous application of our real-life patient zero protocol. The decisive criterion was the double blind. In the lab tests we saw before, often the scientist knew the answer, and he could, unintentionally, give a clue, a smile, a pause. In cold reading, the medium reads the client. In Randy's test, no one knew. Let us take the case of the dowsers. They said they could sense where the water ran. Great. Randy prepared a field with 10 buried pipes. Only one would have water. But which one? The decision was made by a computer randomly. The dowser walked through the field and planted his flag. And crucially, the judge observing him also did not know where the water was. What does Axiom conclude? This method eliminates everything. It eliminates cold reading because the judge cannot give clues. It eliminates hot reading because there is no information to research. It eliminates the visual cues of the laboratories. Only the ability and its result remain. And time after time, the result was the same. The dowsers, who were 100% certain, suddenly got it right 1 in every 10 times, exactly what chance predicts. Aura readers could not tell who was hidden behind a screen. Telepaths failed miserably. Whenever the possibility of a trick or self-deception was removed, the power disappeared along with it. If the gift does not exist, if no one can prove it under the fairest conditions, why does this industry remain firm? Why does it seem stronger than ever? Because it is not driven by gifts. It is driven by money. Axiom built an economic model. The result is frightening. The global market of the supernatural moves more than $100 billion a year. It is an industry with several sectors. The first is private consultation, the front line. The second is the media empires, psychics who become famous on television. And what do they do with the fame? They open the third sector, the magic academies. They sell courses on how to open your third eye for thousands of dollars. Axiom analyzed the model, and it is an esoteric pyramid scheme. They sell diplomas so that the students can, themselves, start deceiving others. And the fourth sector is the newest, the internet. Astrology apps, tarot by chat. The intelligence analyzed some and discovered that often there is not even a person on the other side. It is a chatbot or a telemarketing operator with a script, charging by the minute. It is fraud on an industrial scale. And the cost is not just financial. How many people with treatable diseases abandoned medicine to try an energy cure and lost precious time? How many families were destroyed because a psychic saw a betrayal? Randy's challenge proved that the gift does not exist, but the $100 billion industry proves that the need to believe is the greatest force in the market. Looking back, what remains are ruins. We toppled every pillar of this belief. The ancient prophets were masters of ambiguity. The lab scientists were masters of self-deception. Modern mediums are masters of psychology and Google search. And the $1 million challenge proved that when the trick is impossible, the ability disappears. Logically, the case should be closed, but our world is not made only of logic. The most important question remains: why? Why, despite all the proofs, despite all the rationality, does faith in psychics not only survive but seem stronger than ever? Why do intelligent, educated, and sensible people still believe? To answer this, we need to turn our analytical scalpel to the darkest and most mysterious place of all, not outward, but inward, to our own brain. Axiom analyzed the architecture of the human mind, and the conclusion is disconcerting. The problem is not in them. It is in us. We are biologically programmed to believe in the impossible. Our brain evolved for millions of years with a single goal: to survive. And to survive, it needs to find patterns in chaos. We are the species that looks at the clouds and sees faces, that hears the wind and thinks it is a whisper, that sees two stars and connects them, creating a constellation and a story. This ability to find patterns is what allowed us to predict seasons and hunt. But it has a side effect. We see patterns even when they do not exist, and we have the will to confirm what we already think. Our brains are like stubborn lawyers. They do not seek the truth, but rather evidence to prove what they have already decided to believe. If you believe that the number 13 brings bad luck, you will ignore the 500 times that the number 13 was normal, and you will remember that one time you tripped. This is the belief engine. The desire for control, the search for patterns, and the will to confirm. Together they create the perfect storm for the virus of the supernatural to take hold. The psychic does not need to be good. He just needs our brain to do the work for him. But what about those stories? Those cases that are so strange, so detailed, that even skepticism cannot explain. We fed Axiom with the most difficult cases, the last bastions of the inexplicable. The first case, Gerard Croiset, the Dutch psychic who helped the police. The most famous story is that of the girl Irmgard Stelzel, 4 years old, missing in Germany. The police were lost. The girl's father called Croiset, who hundreds of kilometers away took the photo and saw everything. He described a bridge, a sawmill, a grey car, and said that the girl was dead, in the water. Days later, the body was found exactly as he said, the proof of a gift. But Axiom analyzed the archives of the time. First, the police already suspected she was in the river. It was the main theory. Second, Croiset's map was full of errors that everyone forgot. Third, and most important, the intelligence found a small note in a local newspaper before the call, where the police asked for information about a grey car seen near the bridge. Croiset failed the fifth criterion, isolated information. The second case, the Ganzfeld experiments. This was science's great hope. Volunteers were placed in total isolation, eyes covered with ping-pong balls, headphones with white noise. In another room, a transmitter tried to send an image to them. The chance of getting the right image was 25%, but the results of hundreds of tests gave 32%, a small number but statistically impossible to be chance. Axiom analyzed the data and found the file drawer effect. Laboratories that achieved positive results published their studies with fanfare. Laboratories that found normal results, that is, 25%, shelved the study for being boring. When Axiom took all the data, the published and unpublished, the average success rate dropped to 25.2%. Exactly chance. The last case is the most personal. Sensations at the moment of death. The story that thousands tell, saying they were washing dishes and suddenly felt a shiver and knew that at that exact minute their mother died on the other side of the country. This is not a fraud. It is a real sensation. How to explain it? Axiom points to two factors. The first is selective memory bias. If your mother is sick, you have that pang of anxiety dozens of times a week. You forget all the times you felt it, and she was fine. But you remember the only time it coincided. The second is the law of large numbers. 8 billion people live on the planet. Millions of people have sick relatives. Every day, trillions of thoughts and events occur. It would be statistically impossible for these two things not to coincide every now and then. The last bastions fell. What seemed inexplicable was just psychology and statistics. The circle is closing. Now we need to gather these loose pieces. We traverse the entire labyrinth, illuminating every corner with the cold light of analysis. We started with the ghosts of the past, and the great prophets revealed themselves to be masters of vague language. We entered the laboratories, and the scientific miracles showed themselves to be merely methodological errors and a desperate desire to believe. We opened the modern arsenal, exposing the psychological tricks of cold reading and the digital espionage of hot reading. We saw how a $1 million prize, protected by a perfect protocol, waited for half a century and no one was able to claim it. We dived into the architecture of our own mind and discovered that we are programmed to see patterns and confirm our beliefs. And finally, we analyzed the most inexplicable cases, and even they dissolved under the weight of logic and statistics. The road was long. Now it is time for the final synthesis. Axiom processed the entire dataset of our investigation. Historical chronicles, laboratory protocols, psychological models, financial reports, and thousands of testimonies. Everything was weighed and compared. We did not ask Axiom what it believes. We asked what the data proves, and now we are ready to give the verdict. So the fundamental question, the same one we asked at the beginning, do they exist? Are there people capable of systematically, in a proven way and under controlled conditions, obtaining information by paranormal means, breaking the laws of physics that we know? Axiom's answer, based on all the data, is a single and direct word: no. Based on all data analysis available to humanity, from ancient texts to the most recent scientific studies, the intelligence found no irrefutable, statistically significant, and replicable proof of the existence of extrasensory perception as a real phenomenon. None. Everything we confuse with a gift is in fact a combination of other well-explainable phenomena. And now we can list what the true superpowers we found are. The first is the art of observation. Many psychics are just brilliant psychologists. They read body language, pick up the slightest changes in voice, and make precise logical deductions based on a person's appearance. The ability is not in the third eye, but in extreme attention to detail. The second is the technique of manipulation, cold reading and hot reading. It is not mysticism. It is a technology to extract information from you or from the internet and sell it back as a revelation. The third is statistical coincidence. In a world with 8 billion people, where trillions of events happen every day, unlikely things are not just possible, they are statistically inevitable. Our brain takes these flukes and calls them destiny or miracle. The fourth is self-deception, which comes from our own cognitive biases, the need for control, the search for patterns, the will to confirm. We are active participants in the illusion. We want it to be real because it gives us comfort. The fifth is direct fraud. Yes, behind many famous names there is only cold calculation, with information collected in advance, assistance in the audience, and agreed upon scripts. In the end, there is no magic there, only a con. Observation, manipulation, coincidence, self-deception, and fraud. These are the 5 pillars on which the entire phenomenon rests. But does this mean that everything we feel is a lie? That the deep connection we have with those we love is just chemistry? But the most important conclusion of our journey is another. Axiom did one last analysis. It crossed the data of belief in the paranormal with people's psychological state. Belief is rarely a sign of stupidity. It is, in fact, a symptom of deep human needs that are not being met. When official medicine says it has done everything it could, the person seeks a healer out of pure hope. When a psychologist offers years of therapy for grief, the person seeks a medium for immediate comfort. When the world seems chaotic and unfair, the person seeks a fortune teller for a sense of order and control. The multi-billion-dollar supernatural industry discovered that it does not need to sell miracles. It only needs to sell substitutes for hope, for comfort, and for meaning. So, what to do with this knowledge? Should we become cynical? But Axiom's verdict should not be seen as a condemnation. It is a liberation. It is liberation from the fear that the diagnosis of curses impose on us. It is liberation from the guilt that mediums cultivate. It is liberation from the power we give to coincidences and dark predictions. When we accept that the world is governed by laws of physics and probabilities, and not by the whims of spirits, we take back responsibility for our own lives. It is understanding that the future is not written in the stars, but built by our actions. That our success is the result of our work, not of a curse undone. That we can deal with grief by leaning on the living, and not on the whisper of the dead. The miracles we look for so desperately out there have always been in here. The human body's capacity to heal itself is a miracle much more real than any energy healing session. The strength of a friend's empathy is a magic much more powerful than any spell. The power of our intellect, which allowed us to decipher the genome and fly, that is true clairvoyance. Our investigation is complete. And although we did not find any psychic, we found something much more important. The proof that the most incredible force in the universe is not the paranormal. It is the human mind. With all its weaknesses, all its glory, and its infinite capacity both to deceive itself and finally to find the truth. If you liked this investigation, subscribing to the channel helps us expand the Axiom Investigation Project. We would love to read your thoughts on the video's subject in the comments and your suggestion for the next topic to be covered. Tell us which city you are watching from. Thank you for staying with us until the end.